Let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, though. The Cleveland Cavaliers currently are playing the Milwaukee Bucks as we record this show on a Friday night. They're up 14-6 in the first quarter. They look great. And part of what I want to talk about here is they're currently sitting at 18-13. When Darius Garland went out following the Evan Mobley injury, they were sitting at 13-12. This was not really a situation that looked all of that positive, but they have won 5 of their last 6 without Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Look, it's been a soft schedule up until tonight. They're playing at home against the Milwaukee Bucks. If they win that game, really good sign. But in those 5 of 6 that they've won recently, it's been the Hawks, the Rockets, the Jazz, the Pelicans, the Bulls, and the Mavericks. Beating the Mavericks, if I remember correctly, on the road was a ridiculously impressive game. I was super, super impressed with Karis LeVert in that game.
Yeah.
Particularly, I thought he played incredibly well. And the other thing worth noting here is that the schedule doesn't get that much harder here over the course of the next little while. If you were going to have catastrophic injuries, this was the point of the season to where it would be okay to have them maybe. They have Milwaukee that they're playing right now, but then their next games are Toronto, a back-to-back with Washington, San Antonio, Brooklyn, and Chicago. Like, it's not crazy that they start this little run here without Garland and Mobley, 9-4, 10-3, something like that, given that they've already started 5-1 over the course of this stretch. So let's start with the positives first, because I think that I do have some general questions about where the overall direction of the Cavaliers is going, just given some of their contractual situations, particularly one contractual situation that we'll discuss. What have you liked about this little stretch of the post Evan Mobley, Darius Garland injuries?
So I want to shout out my guy, Fear the Fro, a Cavs NBA podcast. If you're a Cavs fan, go listen to that. That's my guy, Bob Schmidt. He does a really good job covering the Cavaliers. He's here in the chat. I'm sure he'll leave us once we stop Cavs talk, but he's here at least for this portion. And he made a point. He texted me after your tweet before we started recording, Sam, and he said, you better talk about Jarrett Allen and how well he has been playing. And he absolutely has. It sounds like he started off really well tonight. But you mentioned Karis LeVert. I think there's a few other guys like, I watched this game the other day. I thought Isaac Okoro looked like an NBA player. I thought he looked like a solid NBA player. Sam Merrill had his moment to shine in one of these games. Who was the other player? Dean Wade has, Craig Porter Jr. That's the one that I should have mentioned off the top, who has just been incredible and truly looks like at least a backup NBA point guard. So yes, Donovan Mitchell is insane. He's awesome. I'm sure we'll discuss him in length, Allen, but some of these other guys, like, this is how you survive these stretches, Sam, is you get wins on the margins with these type of players. And right now they're getting great production from those guys.
It's exactly right. I'm glad you brought up the depth guys. I think they're really important. I do want to talk about Jarrett Allen very quickly at the top. He's averaging 18 points, 12.5 rebounds on 66% from the field. Over the course of those 6 games, he has been kind of everything for them during this stretch, because Donovan Mitchell has missed a couple of these games as well. Like, Donovan Mitchell did not play against the Dallas Mavericks, and they still beat the Dallas Mavericks. And it was a big piece of it was Jarrett Allen going for 24 and 23 and 6 assists in that game. He was unreal. I thought he completely dominated the paint in a way that, frankly, like, I like Jarrett Allen a lot. I think he's a great player. I wouldn't always refer to him as dominant, I guess is the way that I would phrase it. Like, I think he works typically really well in tandem with Evan Mobley. I think that his ability to play in drop coverage is really high level. Obviously, he is an incredible rim runner as well. I thought that in that Dallas game, he just completely controlled and dictated everything that was happening within the paint. Just a really, really impressive game from Jarrett Allen. And I'm glad that Fear the Fro here brought him up, because Jarrett Allen has been terrific in this little run.
I don't want to be the hater here. I do want to just make a quick caveat, and this speaks a little bit more to the Mavs. Like, they were playing Grant Williams as their 5 during portions of that game. So there was a little bit of they had gotten Derek, and this is his credit, but they had gotten Derek Lively in foul trouble. They played Dwight Powell some, but then they also had to play Grant Williams at the 5. That's a little bit more of like, man, that made me a little nervous watching the Mavericks more than anything. But to his credit, as you said, we've seen other people not dominate very advantageous matchups, and he absolutely dominated. So I don't want to just completely take it away. I just did want to add that little bit of a caveat, but he's been incredible. Sam, they started Craig Porter Jr., Strus, who's been awesome, Okoro, Wade, and Allen. Dean Wade got 2 fouls right away because he took the Luka matchup, and that's what happens whenever you take the Luka matchup to start a game. They were down by like 20 at one point, should have got blown out, and they came back. Like, it was a super impressive performance. I also want to give Amani Bates a little bit of a shout out. He came in, played a few minutes, didn't necessarily make shots, but I thought he showed real growth just distributing the ball. He took good shots for the most part, but he had a few nice passes. Just a quick little caveat, and then we can move on.
So I'm glad you brought up Amani. I'm glad he's, at least getting to the point where he can get on the court in depth situations. But I do want to talk about the 4 guys that you kind of brought up at the start here. Craig Porter Jr. has been unbelievable. He has been a genuine backup level point guard in the NBA as a rookie, which is really, really difficult to say. Like, he has been better. Look, he's 5 years older, if I remember correctly, than Scoot Henderson, but Scoot Henderson went number 3 in the draft. Craig Porter went undrafted and I think is on a 2-year two-way right now, which is just completely bonkers. He's just a complete adult out there. He's confident. He makes the right reads consistently. He's averaging 6.3 assists versus only 1.2 turnovers during this little run. He plays solid, consistent defense. He contests shots. He gets around screens. I think he just does a really, really good job running the show out there. Dean Wade is a guy that I have been consistent on this show saying that I think he is a legit rotation player. Last year, he had the shoulder injury that tanked the shooting a little bit, but he started 17 games over the course of the season now, but over those last 6, he's averaging 10 points on 50, 48, 100 shooting. He has just been a solid, consistent 3-and-D, like kind of combo-y 4-man, occasionally slides up the line up to the 3. A really, really valuable piece for the Cleveland Cavaliers to be able to bring in as like their 10th man. I think he's a little bit better than that. I think he can be a team's like 7th or 8th man, but and the Cavs are starting to use him that way. And I'm glad that they are, and I'm glad he's healthy again. Health has always been kind of the factor for Dean Wade. The third guy I want to bring up is Sam Merrill, as you said. I've been a big Sam Merrill guy. I've had Sam Merrill on this podcast pre-draft before back in 2020. Sam Merrill, I had a top 40 grade on him in 2020 pre-draft. I'm glad he's finally getting his shot. I thought that, frankly, as I mentioned in the summer, he was the best player at Summer League this past year outside of Jabari Smith and Tari Eason. Over the course of these last 6 games, he's played 4 of them. He's averaging 13.8 points on 48, 48, 75 from the field in like 18 minutes a night. He had 2 monster games. Like, he played incredibly well. I think he had like 27 against Houston and 19 against Utah. I might have flipped those. But he was really good in both of those games. I think he's a real guy that can be like a back end of the rotation player. And finally, again, like you mentioned with Isaac Okoro, he's really starting to figure it out. Yeah. I think Okoro has generally been like pretty solid this year and has been like an okay 5th, 4th guy to have out there. Over these last 6, again, 14 points, 53, 42, 68 shooting. He's willing to let it fire from 3, shooting 4 of those per game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists per game during that time. Provides energy, athleticism, defensive capability. He takes on tough assignments consistently. He's 22 years old still. He entered the NBA draft incredibly young in 2020. He is less than a month older than Jaime Jaquez. And he's going to be a restricted free agent this summer. If he's able to keep this run of play going, this is going to be a guy that like teams really try and get out of Cleveland, I think, because he is so young. He's clearly useful on defense, and the offense is starting to come together. There have been consistent, like gradual steps that he's made offensively to where you go, oh, this is clearly something here that he can build upon. I really, really like what I've seen from Isaac Okoro. over the course of this season, but particularly over the course of this last like little 2-week stretch here.
I mean, I think he's a guy that a lot of people believed in the defense, but for Cleveland, it was you needed a guy that could space the floor around this other group that you had, and he wasn't really doing it. But yeah, he's at 38% on over 2.5, 71% are corner threes, and he's right under 40% on those. Obviously, you'd want that to be a little better, but it's about the improvement. He's continued to get better. I also want to just give a little shout out to Tristan Thompson. Like this dude at 32-year-old, he comes in, he's averaging like 1.5 offensive rebounds and how many ever minutes he's getting. I'm not saying he's like the linchpin to anything. I'm not saying he's been any better than like Craig Porter Jr. or anything like that, but coming in, especially with Mobley out right now, you need a little bit of depth at the big position. And I think he comes in and he plays really, really stinking hard. He grabs some offensive rebounds. I just wanted to give, again, kind of like the Amani thing, I wanted to give him a quick shout out as we go through all of these guys that this is really good roster. Like shout out the front office there in terms of compiling all of these guys where you can withstand this. Because really, Sam, I look at the top 3 in the East and then I'm looking for the 4th team. Because listen, we love Orlando. Both of us love Orlando. They may start to, plateau just a little bit. And then I look at Cleveland. It should be Cleveland. And then I was like, oh no, the injuries. But as you outlined, they've been playing well and they have these other guys playing well. They're really still right in there in the run for that 4th seed.
I think that they are, as long as they take care of business during this little run.
Sure. Yep.
Some of the general fundamental numbers here are not like incredible, right? I think that they have like barely, I think they're like at +4 over the course of these last 6 games per 100 possessions. And a team that goes 5-1 during that stretch should be like more in the like +8 or 9, 10 range typically, if you're winning that many games over that much of a sample, right? So that part is slightly concerning, let's say. I will also say generally over the course of the full season, without Mobley on the court, the team gives up over 118 points per 100 possessions. Minutes without Mobley and Garland on the court, the Cavs still have a negative 0.2 rating, even though they've won this stretch of games here. The bigger sample says that this is going to be a problem at some point once they start playing good teams. The question is just, can they manage this stretch of games here where they can rack some wins and just have Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, and these depth guys just go nuts here for the next 3 weeks, basically, get it closer to where Garland and Mobley are going to be back, and then feel a little bit more confident that, hey, we might be able to kind of withstand this, get hot late in the season, and then make a run. Because ultimately what this is all leading to is you have to convince Donovan Mitchell to sign an extension this summer. I don't think either of us think that this team is a championship level team this year, which means that you're continuing to build, you're continuing to grow. That's your whole thing. Where that growth has to continue, though, is with Donovan Mitchell, and you need to be able to sign Donovan Mitchell to that extension so you can keep going down this road.
Yeah, I mean, he's really, really good. Yeah, you brought up the numbers real quick. Just, looking at Basketball Reference, some of the miscellaneous stuff, just the offensive rating, defensive rating, none of it's like really top 10. And that kind of surprised me. Like usually there's something you can pinpoint and none of that stuff really stood out. Now, Donovan Mitchell's so good, man. He's crazy talented. The start, stop, the wiggle. He just has some stuff to his game. He's just one of those guys that can stop on a dime, rise up into his shot. Like it's just some nights you watch him play and you just flat out can't guard him. No matter who they put on him, they can't guard him. This dude is 5th in the NBA and made threes since 2017, 2018. So he's up there with Curry, Harden, Hield, Lillard, those guys. I think at the time when I put this in my notes, so this might've been a couple weeks ago, but he was 2nd in the NBA in transition points, only behind SGA. Like this, Donovan Mitchell is so good. I think I only rattled this off because sometimes I forget, Sam, how good Donovan Mitchell is. I think I underappreciate him at times. And so I wanted to take 30 seconds here just to appreciate how good this dude is.
Yeah, and I think that where this has to go moving forward, and just I've seen a lot of people bring up, should they trade Donovan Mitchell now? Should they blow this thing up? My bigger thing is, like we talked about maybe 2 weeks ago now, I think there's like a real case to blow up the Mobley Allen combination. They tend not to elevate one another. I don't think it's an accident that Jarrett Allen's best run this season has been without Evan Mobley on the court. It's not to say either of them are bad players. I just don't know that they lift up each other's games in the way that you would hope. I also believe, though, that Donovan Mitchell resigning is the key to everything. And I don't think that you can really make a decision, especially if you're good here during this stretch, which they've been pretty solid now. You can't make a decision on that until the offseason at this point, unless they like really start to tank these games and like drop them, right? Like if they lose to Milwaukee tonight and then drop one of these games to Washington, drop a game to San Antonio, and drop a game to Brooklyn or something, and their net rating drops way too low, like where the indicators are, okay, this is a significant problem. I think then it's worth having the conversation about Mitchell. I don't think it's worth having the conversation about trading Mitchell yet. I think if they can keep racking wins here, like we've seen them do without Garland and Mobley, then I think you let this continue and play forward here throughout the course of the season. And then you have to make decisions based on what Mitchell tells you in the offseason.